On this episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast, I'm talking with Joseph Kovelia from Blacklight Security. Now, I've been to Afghanistan, and a lot of other people I know have been to Afghanistan, but he grew up in Afghanistan. So from 6 months through to about 13 years old, he actually lived there. Like that was his, so we have a really interesting conversation on what was life like growing up in Kabul. And, instead of going to the Goldie for family holidays, why don't we pop down to Pakistan through the Khyber Pass for the family, summer vacation? But more importantly, we push across and talk into Blacklight Security. He's got a great business. He's a super interesting guy. And he even exposes me in the way that I found out during this episode that my crypto account was hacked 6 years ago and I didn't even know about it. So stick around. A fascinating conversation about growing up in Afghanistan into an amazing cybersecurity business. And really fun. Stick around. In this episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast, I'm talking with Joseph Kovelia from Blacklight Security. G'day, Joseph.
Hey, Pete. How are you?
I'm well. Where are you dialing in from today? Where in the world are you?
Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, love it, mate. Well, I'm only an hour north of you on the Central Coast. But tell me, whereabouts in the world did you grow up?
Actually grew up traveling quite a lot. I was born in Scotland, but we moved to Afghanistan when I was 6 weeks old and then spent about 10 years there before moving over to NZ, and now landed in Australia.
Hang on a sec, rightio. So obviously I speak to lots of people that have been to Afghanistan, including myself. What are you doing over there at 6 months?
Yeah, my parents were 6 weeks. My parents were aid workers. So dad did a bit of work with the UN. Mom worked with one of the international schools over there as a nurse. And so that kept us in the country for a reasonable amount of time.
Wow.
10 years. I was there 10 years. They were involved maybe 16 or so.
Mate, and whereabouts over there were you?
Kabul the whole time. Yeah, capital city.
So
Where
I'm a little bit
whereabouts were
taken
you?
back, to be honest. I was in Tarankalt with the Australian forces, but I'm actually a little bit
Yeah.
taken back. I wasn't expecting that. So,
Yeah, right.
like I said, I speak to so many people that have been to Afghanistan, but not someone that lived there as a kid.
Mm.
Just share, what was it like spending your early childhood in Kabul?
Uh, I get asked that question a lot when I mention to people that I grew up there, which I don't really mention that often anymore. But it was, I mean, at the time for me, it was just normal because wherever you're sort of raised initially as a kid is just kind of normal life. So that's kind of what it was for us. Now we definitely had the context of the West because every 3 years we would go back to the UK, where I'm from. And we'd kind of see what normal life over there looked like and get a taste of that, and then go back to Afghanistan. But overall, I would say restrictive in the sense that, we had 14-foot walls with razor wire around our house. We had a guard. And whenever we wanted to go to school or go to, the bazaar for some shopping or go to a friend's house, it was always, you're in a vehicle. You can't just walk around. I mean, some of our friends did walk around, but there was risks associated with that. And, there was people who suffered the penalties of those risks. Our organization basically mandated that we had to only travel in vehicles if we were leaving the house. So it was restrictive, but I mean, eye-opening for sure. You definitely get exposed to a different culture, a different religion, a different way of life. And we actually did have the opportunity, especially when I was younger. Things kind of got a lot more heated closer to sort of 2010 and then onwards. But even in the earlier years, sort of around the 05, 06, 07 time, before we left for the first time, we'd go up to sort of the rural areas like Bandi Amir and Bamiyan. We went before the Buddha was blown up as well, which I think used to be one of the wonders of the world.
Yeah. Do you remember seeing it by any chance?
I don't remember. I think I was like a year old. I might not have even been a year old. I've just seen the photos of us there. It might have even been technically before I was born. I just saw the photos of it. I can't remember. I just remember my parents showing me photos of them being there. But we traveled to places. I remember Bandi Amir and Bamiyan very well. We used to go to Istalef as well. My friend's dad had a lodge up there where people could stay. We met some regiment troops up there. Actually, that was part of my initial inspiration for joining the military, was meeting those guys when I was, God, maybe 13, 12 or 13. But yeah, we travel all over the place. Nuristan, Herat, where they make the really nice sort of blue and turquoise glass products. Where else did we go? All over the place. And then whenever we'd go on holiday, it was to Pakistan. So we'd go via what was that pass called? The mountain pass where you drive through.
Is it? Or?
Yeah, the Khyber Pass. Yeah, we'd go out through the Khyber Pass and we'd stay in Peshawar. There was a guest house there where we would stay and have holidays. And it was funny, man. Like, you asked, what was it like growing up there? You know, it was normal life. And then going to Pakistan was like this holiday location that was, you know, felt so much ahead of the times compared to Afghanistan.
Mate,
yeah,
so
it was interesting.
Well, it's not quite the Gold Coast, but like I'm still a little bit blown away. So when you talked about, again, if you don't mind me asking, you're going on holidays, are you guys just driving around in a car by yourselves?
Yeah, we'd have some. I mean, it's pretty interesting stories. My parents would have. Well, one that was particularly interesting was I think I was like 1 or 2 years old. Like, this was really early. And my passport, they checked my passport, and for some reason it had expired. So I don't know why it was such a short lifetime of the passport from when I was born, but they discovered it had expired. And this was when the Taliban still had quite a lot of control in different areas. This was pre 9/11. So Taliban were basically in power. And had majority control in, you know, most regions around the country. So we were trying to, my parents discovered this and they were like, oh my God, you know, we can't renew the passport here in Kabul because there's no foreign embassy, at least for the UK. And then so they had to get out to Pakistan. Yeah. But, you know, if the Taliban see, oh, here's this person with a passport that's not valid, because, I mean, if you've ever, I'm sure you have with the experience that you had sort of in Afghanistan, or maybe not, individuals being given essentially to do, it's almost always abused. And so, you know, if you came across a Talib who, you know, was having an off day and decided he didn't like the fact that you had a passport that was expired, then God knows what he could do. You know, maybe he'd take me away from the parents, or steal something else from the car. They'd always go through and steal shit, but they were driving me out and they had to hide me inside a suitcase. And drove me across the border. And then once I got to the other side, I mean, they were like, I could breathe and everything. It's not like I was going to die, but, you know, they had to basically smuggle me out into Pakistan and then get the passport renewed. And when they got to the embassy, the guy was so grateful. He's like, oh, you know, thank God you just brought him out. This could have been a hell of a, you know, nightmare and a crisis for us to resolve. So, yeah.
Anyway, then you get your passport done. You just turn around and drive back in Afghanistan.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, actually. I mean, even after, I remember we had like a map of our place that showed our house, and then it was, you know, all of the houses around it, because we knew a lot of the neighbors. There was like Taliban were like maybe 60 to 70% of the surrounding houses. There was Chechen rebels. There was Al-Qaeda. There was Mujahideen. Like, they were just all around. And then it was us in the middle of freaking, you know, all of that. After 9/11 and the foreign troops moved in, a lot of that kind of changed. You know, they kind of scattered like rats a little bit, especially from a lot of the metropolitan areas, if you can call them that, or the city areas. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I remember even when I got a little bit older, we would, I think it was I can't remember. I don't even remember what happened. I should probably look into more of the history, but like sometime around 2007, I think things got worse for some reason. I really should know the history more than I do. But that was part of why we evac'd and then we went back later. You'll probably know more because maybe you were even deployed around that time. But pre-2007, we did actually used to walk around sort of and to school a lot more than in the later days. And I remember sometimes we would walk to like the market or whatever, and there'd be some Taliban mullahs, you know, like the head of the mosques, sitting there, and we would sit down and have tea with them and talk with them. So, you know, when we come back to a Western country and people are like, oh, you know, you met Afghans, they're all, you know, terrorists. And it's like, well, first of all, I went to school with a lot of Afghans, and, you know, as you'll know, the general population are not all terrorists. It's just a subset of individuals that, you know, dramatizes people's perception of it from the outside. But like even some of these Talib mullahs, I mean, I don't know what they got up to in their own time, but they were friendly enough guys who we could sit and have tea with, and we'd go to Nuristan and they'd let us hold their AK-47s and they'd just sit and chat with us. So yeah, I mean, it's just a different experience and a different perspective than most people from the outside world would have, for sure.
So do you speak Pashto or Arabic or any of the languages?
I don't speak Pashto. Yeah, Farsi. I grew up speaking Farsi, but never that well, if I'm being honest. And it's been 12 years now since I was speaking it on a regular basis. I can still get by conversationally. Like if I went back there, I'd probably pick it up pretty quick. And when I meet Afghans here, even in Sydney, I'm able to have sort of, basic conversation with them, which is nice. And I do speak a bit of Arabic as well, but that's not from Afghan days, because they speak Dari is the dialect of Farsi that they speak there, and then Pashto and Urdu as well in some of the areas closer to Pakistan.
One of the things I'd always love to do is, because I was a loggy, so I spent most of my time in the camp. I wasn't a combat guy who was out and about, but I did love the beautiful mountains, and I would love to go back there. Would you, this is going to sound weird, but I would think that me going back there with my family and kids is something that I absolutely would not think about doing now. And I just think I just think it would be risky and just a bit ridiculous. But you guys did this. This was like, hey, we're going on holidays. Let's drive from Kabul to Pakistan. Would you feel comfortable going back and driving around?
Comfortable? If I was on my own, yes. Would I take, family and kids? Probably not right now. My parents did it for, their own reasons. But I think I just don't know if it's worth the risk. Like there's a lot of other places that have beautiful mountains and valleys. And I think part of the reason you'd be doing it is for like the adrenaline rush, and also to be able to say, I went to Afghanistan, but I just don't know if it's worth the risk right now, because the Taliban have too much power. If it was, the way it was maybe 10 odd years ago, it still wasn't peaceful, as it were. And there were still risks, but there was at least some level of government in place that had some level of sort of international recognition or relation. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm like I said, I had that came out of the blue for me. That wasn't part of the prep. So okay, so let's move on from Afghanistan. Where did you grow up after that? Okay, you took me out of my sink a little bit there with Afghan. Where did you grow up like a normal kid, or did you ever grow up in a normal place?
So we spent about 7 years in Afghanistan, and within that time, the timelines get kind of confusing only because, we would go back to the UK and we'd spend 6 months in Scotland, and then we go back to Afghanistan, we go 6 months in Ireland, and then a year in England, and then, 2 months in India, and then a month in Pakistan. And we kind of moved all around a lot, but like the main chunks of time were about 7 years in Afghanistan from sort of 6 weeks to 7 years old. And then 3-year stint in New Zealand with a bit of the UK on either side, and then 3-year stint in Afghanistan, and then back to New Zealand. So from about age 14, we lived in New Zealand, and I finished off high school there and then did university in Dunedin in New Zealand.
Got it. So let's swing around now to your connection to the military. You joined the Royal New Zealand Infantry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was awesome. That had kind of been a lifelong dream. Like I mentioned before, I met those regiment chaps when I was in Afghanistan at like 12 years old. And also, we'd been going to military bases all throughout my childhood. We'd go to the British Embassy. I think this was also pre 2007 and also pre 9/11. We used to go into the the embassies all the time. So we'd get, dinner at the British Embassy, and Tony Blair would be there with all of the troops and having a chat. And that was interesting. But it also, the exposure, the level of exposure to military environments. And, every day we'd drive to school and, you could count maybe 30, 40, 50 AK-47s, RPGs, just sitting on the back of trucks with guards walking around. We'd get into, our school compound, and there was, 8-foot sandbags with wire cages, and there was minesweepers, not minesweepers. What do you call them when they, like the mirrors for checking for bombs under the cars? Yeah. And they'd have, maybe 2 guards outside the gate, 2 snipers up in the crow's nests. And then you'd get inside and there'd be another 6 you'd have to get past, and a head of security. So it was kind of like my whole life growing up. And so I'd always had it in my head that I really wanted to join. I really liked the idea of kind of, challenging yourself, being pushed a bit to your limits, kind of being a part of a cohort and like a brotherhood,
Yeah,
especially.
absolutely.
On that note, actually, I was surprised to find out how many girls were in our intake for the infantry, which was awesome. It was just a real surprise to me. I just hadn't even thought about it. But yeah, the experience for me was really one of my highlights, like lifetime highlights, to be honest. And there's still some of my best mates, as I'm sure you'll probably relate to that, and a lot of other lads and lasses who've been through will relate to. You kind of have an amazing connection with some of these people. So yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I only did reserves, so I was never, full time over the course of many years. I did 2 years in the Army Reserves Infantry in New Zealand. We did our sort of 6 weeks intake for basic training, which was just awesome. Getting to shoot all types of different rifles and pistols and throwing grenades and doing your what do they call it when you're like a week out in the bush. You're having to put your hoochies up each night and you're
Field
marching
exercise,
for
something like that.
yeah, field X. That's it. And you're like digging out your we had to dig the holes that we slept in the ground and then put our hoochies up over top of them for when you're doing the sort of exposed land work. And yeah, it was awesome. I loved it, to be honest. My plan is to around mid next year, I would say, join the Australian reserves over here, probably Army, probably infantry or Siggies. Again, just because I got the cyber stuff now, the Siggies might be a little bit more relevant or useful for connections. But I love the infantry. Like, I love just doing the boots on ground shit, getting my hands dirty, getting abused by all the freaking sergeants, having them yelling at us all day. And, God, I think I fell asleep on a tree once and he made me army crawl for like, I think it was about 16 minutes, which doesn't sound that much, but like when he's standing there next to you yelling and everyone else is just chilling and you're doing that in your, gear, you've got your webbing on, you have to have your rifle on you. Man, it was hell. So, but it's I like the experience. I like the challenge.
I love it. Let's unpack a little bit about this cyber stuff, and in particular, Blacklight Security. Mate, tell us about Blacklight. How did it start and what is it?
Sure. Yeah. Blacklight Security. We are a purely veteran offensive security firm. We focus on the likes of, when I say purely veteran, that's all of our technical staff. So we do have some sort of administrative staff who aren't veterans, but that's mostly because the value we see of having the ex-military background and being veterans is that sort of physical side of security blended with and contextualized with the cyber side of security, which we think helps with our approach to a lot of engagements, which I do find to be the case. There's also other perks of working with other ex-military and veterans. There's a common mindset, I guess you could say, or perspective or outlook on things, and willingness to kind of, maybe push a little bit harder than you would otherwise. But yeah, we focus on the likes of sort of penetration testing. That would be one of our biggest, one of the biggest services we offer to businesses. So that's, ethical hacking, as it were, colloquially, where we hack into companies' infrastructure digitally and physically. Actually, we'll do engagements called red teaming, where we actually try to break into the office or swipe office cards or send phishing emails through. And yeah, there's all kinds of different ways to kind of break into companies. But then we do that, and then we go to the company and say, hey, look, here's all the ways we found to get in, and here's how you can fix them, and we can help you fix them as well. And then, of course, there's a lot of run-on work that can come from that, like monitoring and digital forensics in the case they do get hacked as well, which we offer too.
And what got you into this space? Like, for me, again, my mind boggles. It's rather technical for me, but what triggered your interest in even learning about this stuff to found the company?
Yeah, it was years ago. I was actually at medical school at the time, and I was dating a girl who worked for the Israeli embassy. And as you'll know, Israel's kind of tied up quite a lot with a lot of that cybersecurity stuff. I mean, they've had the two largest acquisitions over the last 18 months with Wiz and CyberArk. I think Wiz was $32 billion all cash by Google, and CyberArk was $23 billion or something. So a lot of, very impressive cybersecurity startups coming out of Israel. And that's for a reason, right? It's because they kind of have to put a lot of effort into security on that front. So anyways, she would come home talking about this stuff every day, which kind of piqued my interest. I started doing a little bit more research into it. And then, made the decision to drop out of med school and kind of go all in on trying to make a career out of pen testing once I discovered what it really was. that's kind of been the journey since then. I just kind of haven't stopped.
Love it. And when did you kick off the company? When does it turn from a bit of a, like I'm in the research, study, learn mode to no, I got enough now. I'm going to crack on and start doing this for a living.
Yeah, sorry, you asked that before around how do we actually start. So initially, so last year I was doing a motorcycle tour across the Middle East again. So I was in Saudi Arabia. I started in Egypt actually, drove around Egypt for about a month and then hopped across to Saudi Arabia. I had to go down maybe 600 Ks down the Egyptian coast and of the Red Sea and then take a industrial sort of shipping liner across to get into Saudi with my motorcycle. And then my bike got run over after maybe a month because I couldn't get across the border into Jordan because I didn't have some paperwork for my bike. It's called a triptych. It's like a temporary import document. And I couldn't get that because I'd lost my license the day before leaving New Zealand because I was speeding. So it was like
hopefully you weren't attached to the bike when it got run over, hopefully.
I wasn't attached to the bike, yeah. But I did get it on... It was parked outside my hotel, and I got the security, the CCTV footage for it getting hit. So you can actually see this guy, comes around a corner. There's some roadworks on, so he turns at the last second, hits a speed bump, goes flying off, loses traction, and the back of his car just hits it into another car. So it was totaled. I didn't speak good enough Arabic to be able to figure out how to claim the insurance or talk to the guy who'd done it. And so I was like, well, hey, look, I'll just go and I was working remote at the time, but I thought, you know what, I'll go pick up an extra contract back, somewhere where there's, English speakers and where it's easier to do business, at least based on my knowledge at the time. Pick up a contract, work for another 6 months, stack up some more cash to buy a new bike and a bunch of new gear, and then hit the road again. And did a bit of market research and found that I used like LinkedIn job listings with keywords in them as like my proxy for where might the market be best, which is, it's might not be the best proxy, but it worked for me. And Sydney actually turned out to be the best in the world that I could find for penetration testing compared to, I looked at New Zealand, I looked at UK, I looked at Saudi, Dubai, I looked at East and West Coast US, a number of other places around Europe. Yeah, and Sydney came up as the best, which surprises some people, but I was like, well, look, there's an appetite for it, and it worked. So I got here, and within, 2-3 weeks, I had a amazing contract at a better rate than I'd ever been on. Yep. Working like 50, 60 hours a week to the point where I had to start subcontracting, doing some really interesting work for some really interesting companies and clients. And then the first time I invoiced them, they said, oh, hey, you need to get a registered PTY LTD for these invoices. We can't make these out just under an ABN. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll register a company. Went onto some AI name generator and said, cybersecurity hacking company, cool names, and Blacklight came up. I thought, yep, that sounds pretty cool. Went with that, made the company, and then, kind of chatted with my subcontractors, and because they're just my mates, we've just kind of been working on this stuff together for years, doing gigs, and, we've kind of stuck together over the long run. And I sort of said to them, hey, look, we're making a company. Should we just kind of go all in on this? And they said, yeah, and here we are a year later. So that was last year, September 3rd, I think it was.
Mate, I love it. Just no cuff too tough. Just crack on and jump onto the website. It's blacklight.security. It's a really cool website as well. I love all of the
thanks, mate.
The military inclinations and in particular on the homepage where you've just got that first little. Sometimes it takes a blacklight to see what's really there.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Just going to take the engine away from business. Are you a country? Sure. Are you a country counter at all in terms of how many places you've been to?
That's a good question. Yeah, well, I left New Zealand at the end of 2023, and I traveled for 9 months. Over that 9 months, I think I went to, I can't remember if I counted correctly. It was 16, 17, or 18 countries, somewhere in there. So it was a lot. I was moving country, every couple of weeks or so, which was great. I might have got that number wrong. But it'll be close to that. And it was awesome. Go ahead.
Here's a trick then. There's a cool app called Bean, like BEEN, and you can just I love it, mate, because every time I get to a new country that I've never been, as soon as I cross immigration, open the Bean app and click it up. But I'm at about 53 now, I think.
Oh, you're way ahead of me. Yeah, I think I'm at 26.
But I love it, mate. But this is what we do. So I am like an avid traveler. I just love. So I've definitely got a bit of envy there when I hear you traveling like on a bike down there.
Oh, man, it was awesome. That was trip of a lifetime, eh? So I was saying to some of my team at Blacklight, I was like, hey, once we got a decent bit of stable revenue. And once we're all kind of happy with how things are tracking and we've got our remote set up and some good big clients, let's hit the road for 6 weeks and do a tour somewhere around the world all together.
Well, mate, the beauty is the reason I go, I'm able to go to so many countries is I literally just put this laptop in my leather satchel that's sitting about 2 meters away.
I know.
And I just, wherever I am, as long as there's, Wi-Fi at a hotel, I just flick open the laptop up and I'm at work.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just what I'm doing with VBC. I've been able to do it for the last probably 6 years or so. Hang on, I've got my little man here, Remy, showing me bringing up my little brown pouch as a demo. But mate,
nice.
So Blacklight, tell me, who are your best customers and who are the people who you can solve their problems for?
Best customers. So in terms of, I'll start with employee count, usually a head count upwards of 50 up to about 1,000 tends to be kind of the sweet spot, I guess. So kind of mid-market, entry mid-market right up to sort of your smaller or entry-level enterprise, should we say. That kind of seems to be the sweet spot because part of it is having a budget. Part of it is having an infrastructure big enough to justify doing a lot of sort of security uplift work and, justifying the fact that you might actually be a target or at risk. And yeah, that would be the initial part. Another side of it would be in terms of ideal customer. A lot of customers that have regulatory, compliance requirements. So anyone handling, critical infrastructure or PII, personally identifiable information, or information relevant to health or information relevant to minors. Education sector is one, medical sector is another, and then obviously any sort of tech companies that kind of inject themselves in those areas, or any financial providers. So if you're a fintech provider or in banking, and you've got, PCI DSS requirements, which is the payment card industry digital security standard. There's lots of sort of compliance requirements there as well.
How much do you find is proactive versus reactive in the cyberspace? Like it's not a problem
that's a good question.
Happened versus getting ahead of the game and preventing it happen.
Yeah, that's a good question. We do find, because of how you could say popularized cyber is now, like you're always reading something on the news about it. Someone's always posting something on X or LinkedIn or Reddit about it. You're always seeing it pop up on, YouTube or whatever else, or someone knows someone who got hacked personally, or someone knows someone whose company got hacked or whatever else. Because of that, there's a level of, I guess, common knowledge that helps us sell the proactive work, which is always our preference. Like I said, we do digital forensics and incident response for companies who are hacked on the reactive side of things. Now, something weird, Pete, to be honest, that we have noticed is that a lot of companies will have an incident and they'll do the whole reactive approach, and then they'll kind of reach this point where they think, oh, we've been hacked once, it's not going to happen again, which is a bad mentality for a few reasons. Partially, it's because if you've been hacked once, it probably means that there's some level of interest in you out there to attackers, and that interest is not just going to disappear for no reason. It also means that it's very possible you've got gaps in your infrastructure that might still be wide open after a breach, because often what we'll find is people get breached and they don't even uncover the initial point of access. And then as a result, how do you stop them from getting in again? They'll kind of go through the recovery process and try to get their systems back and running, let's say. But, that attacker might still have the initial access or some other kind of access that he, subsequently created. We call it persistence, as a means of being able to stay inside of the network or the device or the account or whatever it is. So I think, I always advocate for doing the proactive side of things. And I think for companies who do go through the reactive process, my advice would be, okay, now that you've had the issue, let's just take this time, since you're already thinking about cyber, to kind of just do a bit of uplift to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. Because depending on the company, the damage can be, in some cases, catastrophic to the point where your business can't recover, and insurers might not pay you out.
I often think when you were talking about the initial attack, first of all, it made me think of just a simple infantry track. Is it like a probe? Is it just like a first, touch, just to see what's going to happen for later? Where are the most common access points? Are these
Mm.
digital infrastructure failings? Are these human failings? What do you see as the most common trend?
So we actually did a really big research piece recently, looking at it was kind of like a literature review of the last sort of 10 to 20 years of how we've seen initial access take place and where that initial point of entry is. And CISA, the U.S. security infrastructure, based on their own sort of reports that they get from a lot of the U.S. based companies who have to report to them. And what we've found is that it's somewhere around 43% of all attacks originate from initial access brokers, which is people who find a way to compromise an account or a device inside of an organization and then sell it on the dark web to someone else who then goes through and does whatever crimes and activity they want inside the account. Now, all of those, that 43%, that originates predominantly from, in the orders of 80% of those sort of credentials for sale or access for sale originates from phishing. So it's a really, really big focus, and it should be a big focus for people and for companies. That phishing attack vector, which people are aware of, like it's not like this is anything that new. But just in terms of, I mean, there's two things we suggest. One of them is like finding a way to educate your staff is important, but the biggest one we advocate for is assumed compromise. Take an account, and this has been an idea in the industry for a while. Take an account, assume someone already has access to it, and see what you can do from there. And that's what we call an internal network penetration test. So we call it white box or authenticated. And we'll get valid credentials for an organization. We'll then, log in as the user, and we'll see what we can access that we might, maybe we shouldn't be able to access, or ways in which we can get more privileges to be able to access more things that we're not even supposed to be able to see, or maybe move to another account, or maybe create a new account so that if our one gets detected and shut down, we can jump over to that one instead.
Makes first thing I think of listening to you now is my Qantas frequent flyer details just got launched on the dark last week. What does that mean for me?
Yeah, there's a few things. So one would be,
if I can just say, my first thoughts are, and I hate to put this attitude, but I'm almost like, fuck, surely my shit's everywhere. Like I don't know what to even think or what risk it is, because it's almost like, well, what can I do about it? So can you just share with me, number one, what could be the risks for me, and should I care?
That's a good question. The risks for you, one of the biggest ones would be identity theft. So if it's, I don't know what specific information was released in the Qantas frequent flyer database. If I remember, it was just kind of email address and name. But if there's things like date of birth in there, or maybe driver's license number or passport number, it's pretty easy to call up a lot of government providers and say, hey, my name's Pete Liston. And they'll say, okay, we just need to do some identity verification to verify that you are in fact Pete. What's your date of birth? Oh, yep, here's my date of birth. Okay, and what's your passport number? Here's my passport number, or something thereabouts. And they'll say, okay, you've been verified. Let's say it's with your bank. And then they'll say, okay, what would you like us to change, or what would you like us to do? And they could say, oh, I'd like you to change the number that you use to authenticate or verify me accessing my account. You know, when you get that text that comes through, and then they'll say, okay, what would you like to update number to? You give them your new number as an attacker. And then all you got to do is fish the credentials, because I've already got your email address. I've probably got your phone number as well. So I could, do a bit of research on you online, look at your social media accounts, and then go through and send you a targeted phishing email, or give you a call and maybe, use one of those AI voice changers so it sounds like a family member. Somehow get you to, send me your banking credentials, or redirect you to a banking page that would be fake, where you put your credentials into, use those credentials, then use the number that I've now assigned to your account to get access to your bank, and then just transfer it out sort of sequentially or drip by drip. Now, something worth thinking about, the question of should I care? How many millions of these identities are being, released every day? Really, is anyone going to target you? Actually, that's a good question. And the likelihood is, in terms of a targeted approach, relatively low, I would say. Unless you are kind of a big fish, maybe you've got a company or two, or there's, posts in the news about you that have some financial association, like the sale of a company, or you won the lotto or something like that, at that point you should be a lot more careful. But in terms of should you care, that's a tough one, actually. I mean, I think there's certain things you can put in place, like so we call it MFA, multi-factor authentication, which is like with the banking app when you use your phone number. Avoiding things like using your phone number and using authenticator apps instead that give you time-based sort of one-time codes, the 6-digit codes that sort of regenerate every. That's a simple one that provides a lot of uplift and like a lot of security, and making sure that's on all of your accounts, for banking or for your email or for, your LinkedIn or whatever else. That'll cover a lot of bases for you. And then just having some idea of what typical phishing or smishing, as we call them, text-based phishing attacks look like. And knowing kind of how to be careful with those, not clicking on links is a really big one. Not clicking on links unless you're like pretty sure about them. And then if you're not really sure about it or you're kind of suspicious, kind of just avoid it. There are also, data access brokers. Data access brokers are the people who sell your data online. There are also a lot of, there is a provider, I can't remember what they're called. I'd have to look them up, but there's a provider. You could probably just Google search, remove my personal data from dark web. And there's a company that'll pop up who actually offers that as a service, where they'll go through and they'll, look for all of the locations online where your personal data is listed. And then they'll go through a removal process. Now, does it work? I don't know. I haven't done it myself. Is it a good idea? I mean, if you're scared about your own security, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. And I think it's only like $20. It's not that expensive.
It's, again, for me, it's a sort of a sense of naivety. But I can't help but think, like, I'm middle-aged, man. I'm 50. I'm relatively tech savvy. I understand the digital world to a point, but I can only feel, for the vulnerability of some of the, our older people who are just maybe a bit frustrated, just how easy this is to rip them. And the other thing that I think now is like, yeah, well, maybe there's this one piece from Qantas, but how many other little drips and drabs are building up maybe the jigsaw puzzle of my digital persona?
Yeah. So there, you can actually go to a site called Have I Been Pwned? Pwned spelled PWNED, which is made by, what's his name? Can't remember. Oh,
which
Troy.
Was that? Sorry.
Have I Been Pwned? So HAVEIBEENPWNED.com. Have I Been Pwned? Pwned is like owned. It's what we call it in the hacking world. Like when you get into somebody's account or you get into a server, it's called being owned. If you do that by stealing their password to get into it, it's called being pwned.
Got it.
So what you can do if you go to that site, you can just type in your email address there and click check, and it'll check to see what breaches your email has been involved in. And that's a good way to like sanity check for yourself if you need to go through and change your password on those sites. So you can do that as an exercise right now if you want, depending on how courageous you are.
Yeah, well, I've just done it, and this email has been found in a data breach.
Okay.
Hopefully,
does it say which one?
No, I put one of my passwords in there, so no, but it doesn't say. I'm sure that's behind the next page. Oh no, here it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it is. It was June 2019, and it's my crypto wallet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty significant. That's interesting. Usually they're kind of I used to have Zynga pop up on mine and some other online game things from when I was a kid. I don't have that email address anymore, but yeah, I remember seeing that pop up. But yeah, that's a pretty significant one. I'd be, hopefully you've changed your password by now.
Particularly that it's 6 years ago and I didn't know about it. And
all right.
Yeah, so it's literally just come up here. 6 years ago, one of my crypto wallets, which, well, the way I've invested in crypto, it doesn't make much difference. But
okay,
it's just the principle that, well, look, that's interesting.
Yeah, go change your password for that if you still use it. That's a good way to kind of check. Yeah, true. Yeah, maybe they've cleared it out already.
Yeah, well, I haven't even looked at it. I bought there was a piece of crypto called Ripple, and I bought some Ripple about 10 years ago or something like that. I bought it like the day before it crashed, and it went from like $4 to 40 cents overnight. So I've just sort of gone,
ouch.
whatever.
Yeah, right. Fair
It
enough.
wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot of coin. Obviously, it wasn't anything successful. But mate,
Yeah.
I find this stuff really fascinating, and particularly as someone who is like, now I'm no cyber geek or tech guru, but I'm, well, maybe I'm not that tech savvy, even though I'm a very heavy tech user. You know, I do nothing physical for work. I sit on my ass and I type things into a computer on my second monitor.
Yeah.
And that's my business. And I probably got 18 to 25, just looking at how many tabs I've got pinned across the top of my
I'm the
browser.
same.
And then out of those 18 to 25, I'm probably using them 90% of them every day, whether it be
Mm.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Partner Stack, Yahoo Fantasy Basketball, Zoom, Meta ads, LinkedIn, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating this new cyber landscape and just the precautions of it. So tell me a little bit more about how your military application is focused into this, offensive action in cyber.
In terms of the military approach, there's kind of a few benefits that come with it. Like I mentioned, in terms of the sort of outlook or perspective that a lot of the guys and gals that we'll work with who are veterans have, which is really useful. Like even the idea that I could call one of them at 11 p.m. on a Friday and say, like, hey, we've had a customer who's had a breach. And this isn't to say that non-veterans wouldn't do this. It's just that in my experience, veterans, I suppose, have a higher threshold for, let's say, high pressure or high stress scenarios. And so if I'll call them at 11 p.m. on a Friday, first of all, it's relatively likely they'll pick up. And second of all, it's also relatively likely that they'll say, yeah, I can help out. And that might involve us staying up for the next 6 hours trying to resolve this incident for a client. So that gives me some level of assurance when I hire them or contract them on a piece of work that they'll be able to deliver. And obviously, I don't want to, cut into their personal life to the point where it's, taxing their or stressing their personal relationships or their personal sort of, planned events and whatever else. It's just the fact that in the event of something happening, you can rely on them. And the same is true in return. But also just on the more practical side of things, most of them have security clearance or at the very least have held security clearance at some point, which makes it much easier to land some of those defense gigs and some of those sort of government contracts, which are really important for us. Because government contracting, I mean, it's quite lucrative. There's some really interesting opportunities there. Government maturity is a lot lower than you might expect. So there's a lot more sort of work to be done there. And obviously they're, behemoths of organizations. So there's kind of a lot of different areas in which uplift can be brought about, which is again a cool opportunity. And of course, getting involved with defense, I mean, anywhere in the world, but we stick to Five Eyes nations, is an awesome opportunity to do some pretty cool work. And also, part of why any of us join the force, or at least most of us join the force, is to be able to, have that protective ability to, look after the nation and help sort of keep what we have here alive and safe. And so it's the same ability to do that just on a digital frontier, which I really like as well. And I think is part of why all of us kind of stay committed to it and attached to it so strongly.
Mate, tell us what's next for you. What's next for the business? What's coming up? It's exciting.
Yeah, sure. So we've got a few pretty big projects on the go, actually. I mean, Blacklight's really focused on the consulting side of things, like we're a service-based business. But we have a couple subsidiaries, one of which we're fundraising for at the moment from investors. We've got a few interested, and that's around creating the hardware around hacking. So if you've heard of Flipper Zero, we're kind of creating similar products to that. I've actually got one here. Just like a little lightweight hacking tool that you can use for, taking your office card and putting the NFC code on here so you can get into your office, or maybe you could swipe it off someone on a red team engagement and get the master key replicated on here. Or you can, through an IR transmitter, pop open a automatic door that only has a proximity sensor from the other side, things along those lines. So there's lots of fun stuff we can do. But we do find devices like this sometimes limiting, or we have to have too many of them. Like there's a lot of other devices like the Hack5 Pineapple and the Hack RF OMG cable. So if there's ways of kind of putting these into, reformatted devices that we enjoy using more, then we'll always kind of go down that route. So yeah, that's pretty exciting for us. And then, we're expanding globally as well. So we've got a New Zealand shop that's just opened recently, which is headed up by Devin Gregory out there. which is great. And then we've also got some prospective clients based out in the US. So it's kind of an opportunity for us to start extending more overseas. So it's exciting. It's exciting.
Mate, well, I've really enjoyed the chat. I've managed to just
Likewise.
get into my GateHub wallet, and thank goodness there is something still in there. But there is a couple of weird little transactions that I can see that 0.000001 of an XRP has been coming in and
Interesting.
out of my account over the last couple of months.
Huh.
So I'm sure
And maybe
GateHub.
somebody's been using it for some laundering.
Oh, maybe GateHub pays interest. I don't know, mate. But I think it's time to
Yeah,
change my
true.
passwords. But
Yeah, good idea.
thank goodness it's still there. And like I said, I had no idea, man. Like that leak or whatever you call it was
Yeah.
6 years ago. And I can see here what was leaked, just out of curiosity for anyone else. I don't know if it's bad to even say it or not, but that what was leaked was my password, my mnemonic code, or whatever that is,
Yeah.
my encrypted keys, and my email address. So doesn't sound good.
Yeah, well, one of the risks with that as well is that if you use that same password for a number of other sites, then they could obviously test it against a number of other websites. So if you do use that password or reuse that password anywhere else, those would be accounts worth taking a look at and changing
Yeah.
passwords for. I'd recommend using a password manager, actually. That's one thing that's huge uplift for individuals. Get a password manager like Chrome Password Manager, or Apple has a built-in one now just called Passwords.
Yep.
Built in on the browser. Brave's got one as well. Use one of those, store your passwords, make them like 16 characters. Yeah.
Well, maybe so using a combination like Pete Liston one exclamation mark probably isn't going to cut it anymore.
Probably not. Yeah. Password
But
123 is not a great option either.
but having said that, I do have two-factor authentication on that crypto account. And I've
Nice.
always had it. So maybe that's the reason, just that one little tool that there's there's, I don't want to say too much in case someone goes in and gets it, but there's
Yeah.
at least there's money still in there. Well, coin in
Yeah.
there for now. For
Yeah.
now.
Oh, it'll definitely make a difference. Yeah.
Mate, really appreciate the yarn today. Super cool. I've really appreciated your energy. Thank you for letting me go on a little tangent and explore
Sure.
Afghanistan for a little bit. I do have one
Yeah. Well,
question
good.
before we go is
Mhm.
what citizen of what country are you of?
I have actually three citizenships. And three passports. So New Zealand is one, the UK is another, and Ireland is the last. Yeah. And I
Oh,
plan
mate,
to get my Australian one once I join the ADF. So
mate. Get over here. We need more people like you, more intelligent, fun people within the Australian community. Buddy, thank you very much for joining us. Like I said, I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot out of the conversation, and it's a real pleasure for me, to do this humble little pod and to be able to talk to people. So, mate,
awesome.
we're going to get all of the details on how to contact you and how to contact the business. Thank you
Sure.
for jumping on and having a chat on the Veteran Business Community Podcast.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Pete. Appreciate it.
Rightio. Joseph Kovelia from Blacklight Security. If you've gone through and pressed have I been pawned.com as well.
Yeah.
If you've got a company that's 50 people and up and you're worried about what's going on, or this has piqued your interest, then get in touch with Joseph, because I find the techniques that they use to do offensive actions into your own security will be a real eye-opener about actually how robust and resilient you really are. So, mate, thanks for your time today. Have a great afternoon, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Pete. Same to you. Cheers, mate. See you later.
Brilliant. Take care. So, Pete Liston, this has been another episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast. Out.